Hi, this is Matt with State of Flux, here with a review for Alien Resurrection. I had reviewed the previous three Alien films as part of my 52-week movie challenge, and as that challenge is coming to an end, and there's really no more room to include the Alien franchise, I still felt the need to conclude the Ripley saga. First and foremost, because I have not seen Alien Resurrection since I was in high school, which is going back at least 15 years. So I was kind of excited to return to that journey. And Alien Resurrection, my initial thoughts of it back in the day when it first came out was it was an improvement over Alien 3. I was really never a fan of Alien 3, and I thought Alien Resurrection, for all its faults, was at the very least better than 3. Then in high school, which is why I watched it to begin with, I had seen it back in 1997 when it came out, and then I found it again in high school because I became a big fan of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So I returned to it in high school with the Whedon of it all. Joss Whedon wrote the script and then famously sort of trashed the film for lack of execution of his script. And so I had grown a fondness for the movie while I was in high school and watched it a few times and enjoyed it and showed it to a couple friends who had gotten invested in the Buffy franchise, and they kind of spat on the movie quite a bit. So I had not visited the film since then. So this was kind of like viewing the movie with completely fresh and new eyes. And since then, I had become a fan of the works of Jean-Pierre, the director of this film. Prior to this, when I saw Alien Resurrection in high school, all I'd seen is Amelie, but I've gone and seen quite a bit of this filmmaker's works, my favorite of which is Delicatessen. If you've not seen Delicatessen, dude, check it out. It's a gem of French cinema. So anyway, I was viewing this with fresh eyes, as a fan of Whedon's and now a fan of Jean-Pierre Jeunet. And I feel like the movie is kind of similar to my initial feeling of it from back when I saw it in '97, which was, it's definitely better than Alien 3. In some respects, I'm a character-driven person. I think the characters and the character-driven nature of the film, by and large, is better than even the first Alien film. Its execution is its biggest flaw, and I have to agree with Whedon in that. That said, I do think his screenplay makes very calculated mistakes that does not ease the viewer into watching it. First and foremost, it never really justifies its own existence other than Alien is a popular franchise and or was, and we should make more of them. It almost justifies itself, but the problem is when it becomes a sort of alien movie that is trying to mimic either Alien or Aliens, it feels flat. And I don't know if it's due to screenplay issues or due to a director who does not know how to shoot a film that is either scary like Alien or exciting like Aliens. And that's the issue. It's kind of like a kerfluffle of a movie. Because you're sitting there wanting to like it, which ultimately I do. I'm going to point this out. I like Alien Resurrection. It's a soft like. It gets a soft pass, and I'll justify that in a moment. But the problem is the aliensy stuff is pretty weak sauce. That said, it has a couple of big pillars that help support the film that include the alien in it. I really like and I think most people point to this as being the scene that's most memorable from the movie. I really like the underwater scene where they have to hold their breath and swim the 90 yards or whatever to get to through the kitchen and up into where ultimately the hive of the alien is. that scene is good. That scene is tense, it is well shot, it is well executed, but I also feel like that is also the stuff that was probably most developed by the previs department and whatnot. That was meticulously storyboarded, and I don't know that it has necessarily a directorial stamp on it. It feels more like a collaborative effort of viz effects than an authorial moment within the film. That is a definite highlight. I ultimately like the intrigue of the film. The film isn't open in its narrative of like, okay, Ripley's been resurrected to get the alien and whatnot. It doesn't just splat that at you in the opening scene. There's quite a bit of intrigue throughout the movie, and it's the intrigue that really sold me on it. The way the information is presented to the audience is not all at once, and then the movie happens. It is sprinkled throughout the movie. You have Ripley suddenly back. It's implied that she is back through genetic cloning. Why is she brought back is the question. Well, the ultimate answer is the military wants the alien that was inside her at the end of Alien 3. Why do they want that? Like, what is the purpose of that? We're kind of delivered that throughout the story. Why does she have a number 8 on her arm? We get that in the story, and I think that brings me to the second big pillar of this film that makes it work. The scene where Ripley confronts her other clones is haunting, and Sigourney Weaver gives some of the best performance she's ever given, and I don't know that she says a single line of dialogue. The Ripley on the bed, number 7, says "kill me" and stuff, but that's it. It is all just emoted through her eyes, through her actions, through her anger, through her sadness and disgust, and it is powerful. I really like that, and I think that was the one scene where director and writer united to give a quality moment. But ultimately that's all it is. It's moments. This film has moments of excellence, but it has quite a bit of what are we doing here? Getting back. You have Call working to stop Ripley or try to kill Ripley, and you're trying to figure out why. What's the crew of this Betty doing on this ship? The heroes of this film are human traffickers? That's kind of weird. The whole nature of this film is just sprinkled with intrigue, and I like the presentation of that information. Ultimately, though, the reason this works best is, as a fan of Joss Whedon, you can see that this is probably the building blocks of what eventually would become Firefly or Serenity. This is Firefly with aliens in it. It is Serenity, the movie, just this time instead of Reavers, it is aliens. And I liked the crew of the Betty quite a bit. You can see how each one almost mirrors perfectly their Firefly counterpart that would show up about 5 years later. Maybe that's where Whedon thinks that the execution of the screenplay really wasn't what he wanted, and maybe he's right, because when he executed that screenplay for Firefly, for Serenity, he got mass praise, and is probably almost more well-remembered for Firefly than he is Buffy. Buffy was a cultural milestone that was hit, and ultimately my favorite TV show. But even disregarding backlash to Buffy in recent years and his behavior on it, Firefly is what kind of gets talked about as his truest, most fleshed out creation. And I feel like this was like a unaired pilot for Firefly that got reworked 5 years later into the Firefly that we know now. So I like the crew of the Betty. More than that, speaking more specifically to this film, I love the character of Call, and I love the character of Ripley. I like that Call is sort of a Ripley stand-in. This is what Ripley was in the earlier pictures, but now she's a robot with feelings, that's trying to be human and stuff like that. That character, oh yeah, spoiler alert, Call's a robot, an android. That character is really spectacular. But Ripley is the selling point of this film. Had they just resurrected Ripley and she was just continuing her narrative from Alien 3, not only would it have ruined the previous trilogy and the culmination of it, the one good thing that Alien 3 did was provide closure to Ripley's storyline. If you had just reopened it and it was Ripley again, this movie would have been atrocious. The fact that she's not Ripley, she's Ripley 8. She is she's a science gone amok, which was always the threat of the Alien franchise. And weirdly, the thing that makes this film closely tethered into Prometheus and, more importantly, Alien Covenant is how science continues to trying to create the perfect biological being in recreating Ripley is something that David was doing in the Prometheus storylines. And I think how you can connect all 6 of these movies together is through Alien Resurrection, weirdly, tapping back into that narrative that kind of disappears throughout Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3. Ripley and the Queen Alien that's genetically modified are where the David of it all comes back, if you were to watch it chronologically, rather than how they were released. But yeah, I like Ripley. When Ripley was brought back, it took 8 times, and this is the closest they could get to getting a viable alien from her. And so when they pulled the Queen Alien chestburster out of her, Ripley they keep around to do experiments, to test, to science the fuck out of her. And what's interesting and compelling with her is that she's part alien. She is instinctually bonded to them, just as they are her. And when just as she has changed, even with acid for blood, so is the alien. And the alien queen, while being able to lay eggs, which provides the aliens in this film, also has the capacity to give a natural birth. And creates the newborn, and we get a new variant of alien. And all that stuff is really intriguing. I think the plot and how the story unfolds with the Ripley character, with the Queen Alien character, and how Call ties into it, is all really compelling and good screenplay material. I do think this is where the execution kind of flounders a bit. I don't really like the gooiness of the alien. You could say that it's because they're genetically modified, they're different, they're sweating more or something like that, but I just don't like the aesthetic of the alien. I don't like how Jean-Pierre shoots the film, especially with regards to the alien. There is no mystery behind the creature anymore, which has been lacking in each of the films after the first one. This one, they just kind of go all in on what the alien looks like, and there's no mystery to it. It's not particularly well designed in this film, and the birthing scene should have mirrored more closely the chest bursting, and I think the fact that it didn't is a big flaw, because I think that was clearly designed in the script. If you've read the script, it is available online, and I think it reads better than you watch it, which kind of, I guess, goes to what Whedon was saying. However, there are deleted segments within the script that are pretty bad, like a whole cornfield of weed that they're walking through is just so, like, that was dropped for a reason. I also, one of the things that's missing that I really do like is Ripley had repeated nightmares with Newt in them, Newt from Aliens, and that would have been kind of neat idea to revisit. But anyway, I digress. It's the Ripley and the mother, the newborn, Call, the characters on the Betty genre is fun, even though he's just vile and despicable. These are what make Alien Resurrection work. Where it falls flat is as a sequel to any of the three previous Alien films, it just doesn't really work. It creates intrigue, but it's not able to stand alone as its own individual film and as connective tissue to the previous films. It's just kind of disappointing because it's so dissimilar to it. It seems passionless in a lot of areas. That said, as a precursor of to Prometheus and more importantly Alien Covenant, it is more in line with those films and is kind of interesting and intriguing. And I've never watched them from front to back chronologically, starting with Prometheus, ending with Alien Resurrection, and maybe that's something that I should try and see if I get new appreciation for this film in it, because of the whole genetic modification, cloning, and tinkering with life until you create the perfect being. There's elements at play, but I still don't know. I still feel like it would fall flat even then, especially since I'm not a huge fan of Prometheus or Alien Covenant. But we'll address those in a future video. The other thing that I guess I wanted to talk about is the flawed nature of how this film kind of just operates. This is a story continuing because not because it needs to, but because it's financially viable to do so. And when you do that, oftentimes you have too many cooks in the kitchen. And I feel like, being that this film almost reads as a soft pilot to what would become Firefly and Serenity, and the need to have Ripley in it. Now, I don't know how this movie would have worked without Ripley in it. Originally, Whedon's drafts did not have a Ripley character in it because she was dead. So when she was brought on board, that's where the best elements of the film are at play. But that said, this movie suffered from studio notes and also falling out between filmmaker and screenwriter, both of which thought that they had the best intentions and best idea and vision for what the film should be, and neither of which were able to execute on that individually. And I think that's the biggest problem. The fact that this just doesn't work necessarily as a sequel, but is unable to survive on its own without being a sequel, is its big downfall. The fact that it was hacked up by studio notes, and you had the producers / screenwriters of Alien 3 actively against this film's existence, probably didn't help it much either. It is one that I do think is important to come back to, especially if you're not a fan of Alien Resurrection. Give it another go, especially with the context of history and stuff like that. And how the Alien films would move forward after this one. It is neat to see the groundwork kind of in there stemming from this script, whether they knew it or not. It's all kind of here and does connect better to those later films than I would have expected. I give the film a soft pass. I give it a soft 3 stars, just as I gave the first Alien film a soft 3 stars. The first one I gave soft 3 stars because it is technically insanely well made. It's just got a really crummy script. This one I think is kind of the opposite of that. I think technically, the technical achievements of this film aren't all that impressive. Yeah, the digital effects, especially the digital alien, look really good outside of the teeth, are way too metallic and fake metallic looking at that, but the movement of the alien and stuff looks good. It's the fact that the director didn't necessarily know how to shoot an alien movie is the biggest problem, and the opening scene, whether it's the opening credits of the theatrical cut or the director's cut, I'm basing my review on the director's cut, by the way. The opening scene with the killing of the bug and splatting it on the window is absolutely terrible. I know why that was cut from the theatrical experience. However, I do think beyond that scene, the director's cut is the better vision of the film. He just didn't know how to shoot the screenplay at hand and didn't have a good handle on how to handle the humor. The reason I give it 3 stars is because I do think the screenplay has a lot more going for it than I initially thought at the time, or most people expect, especially with where the franchise goes. I like the Ripley stuff, I like the Call stuff, I like the Queen Alien and the Newborn stuff. I'm not a fan of the Alien Xenomorph stuff beyond that. I like the evil military guy who was originally supposed to be played by Bill Murray, and I think had he been the scientist that had brought Ripley back, I think that would have been much better, which is why he kind of reads, like, rewatch the movie and picture his character as Bill Murray delivering the lines, the movie probably would have been elevated considerably. But the strong enough screenplay for a movie that shouldn't exist and doesn't necessarily ever justify itself is the strongest unnecessary screenplay I can think of. And it gets a soft pass of 3 stars because of that. And Sigourney Weaver, Winona Ryder, and Ron Perlman really do a lot of heavy lifting to make what does work in that screenplay really soar. This is a movie with great moments, but not necessarily a great execution. This is Alien Resurrection. I give it a very soft 3 stars. What do you think of Alien Resurrection? I know this one has a pretty vitriolic response, but when's the last time you watched it? Revisit it and watch it under a new prism as I did, and you might find more to enjoy than you expected. Thanks for watching, like, subscribe, peace.